This is Hassan Sadri from Visionary Eye Institute, Newport Beach, California. This is my really good friend, Vicken. Vicken doesn't remember this, but he actually interviewed me during a residency interview when he was at UCI. He was a chief resident.
That's true, actually. Many decades ago.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
When we were in our 20s. So he's an ophthalmologist, obviously. He's well known in the industry. And we're here together at OIS. At AAO 2019 here in San Francisco. So I'm excited to have you on. Vicken, how you been?
Thank you for having me. We're doing great, actually.
Having a good meeting. I just saw your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Job.
So yes, we presented this is the first time we presented to a large audience at AAO, our US phase 2 study in dry AMD. So we basically are treating patients with intermediate dry AMD, patients who are typically around 2050, 2060 to start, and we treated patients at 7 sites across the US with either our drug with 2 injections or a sham injection. And we set a very high bar for ourselves. We're the first people to show in a US phase 2 controlled study that you could actually have a robust reversal of vision loss. We had pre-specified at least 1.5 lines, 8 letters of visual acuity gain as the primary endpoint, and we met that with statistical significance. Almost half the patients we treated had a robust reversal of vision loss in dry AMD. And as you know as an ophthalmologist, the kind of patient we're treating lost their driving, reading vision probably 3 years ago, and they're probably 5 years away from getting to GA. So what's interesting is when you treat patients who are around 2060 and you get this type of visual acuity gain, many of the patients went back to driving and reading vision again.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just what you could see on the eye chart, but actually they improved their function quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very fulfilling as an ophthalmologist, as you know, being a lot of these patients didn't have anything just a few years ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing in retina how much change has happened just in the last decade. Before anti-VEGFs, it was very difficult to treat anything.
Yeah, and so it's interesting, and I also saw your Deer Valley data. Tell us a little bit about front of the eye stuff. It's just exciting.
So we also have a front of the eye drop as well. It's also from the same integrin regulating portfolio that we have. It's not exactly the same molecule. It's a potent anti-inflammatory drug. And what it does is it stops T-cell adhesion to the cornea and migration across the cornea. So we did a ex-US first-in-human proof of concept study that finished earlier this year. It was in 40 patients, and we got a very robust signal. We were strongly statistically significant in numerous signs and symptoms of dry eye disease. We've already started a follow-up study to this exploratory phase 2 study, also ex-US, that'll read out around the end of this year or so.
Pretty remarkable. I mean, to do back of the eye, I remember as early as, 10 years ago when you were working, and your dad, yourself, on the passion of the back of the eye. Now that you have something in front of the eye, I think it's remarkable. That's great, especially dry eye. It's a big unmet need still.
Thank you. Yeah, no, the only problem we have is making sure people don't mix up dry eye and intermediate dry AMD.
Yeah.
Can get mixed up quite a bit.
So tell us about it. How does that, as a CEO, how does that pivot look like? Because you had to get a new KOLs, you had to get a new advisory board, different conversation. Was it difficult, not difficult? You're creating a full-fledged ophthalmology
honestly,
company.
the data is what drives the interest level. So we've made some very big bets in dry AMD, and it attracted a lot of attention. We got really good data in dry eye, even though it's a much more busy space, but the data was robust enough, we were able to attract very solid help. So good data is the foundation for all of this.
So tell us some exciting stuff next couple years coming out. Give us a little bit of a look into the peak in the future.
Sure.
What's exciting for you?
So what's happened very recently is setting up our timetables for the next year or so. So for the retina programs, for intermediate dry AMD, we just met with the FDA 2 weeks ago. We had our end of phase 2 meeting, and they gave us the clearance to go ahead and move into our first phase 2b3 study. It will count as one of the first registration studies.
That's terrific.
What's going to happen with that is we know how our studies will be powered, how they're designed. We're finishing up the details with our scientific advisory board now, and we think that we'll be starting these studies in the first half of next year.
Okay.
As far as the dry eye, front of the eye programs go, the second ex-US phase 2 study will read out around the end of this year or maybe early Q1. If it looks good, we'll file an IND for that, bring it to the US and go into phase 2B for that. The nice thing about the retina programs are more expensive, take much longer, much more complicated, but there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
How's that?
Sure.
On the other hand, for the front of the eye programs, it's much more crowded, but dry eye studies are 3 months long, so you can iterate very quickly.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Great. So I wanted to do a little bit of talk about, because some of this is going to be on the audio version of our podcast.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit, because I know your history, your background is very unique. We've known each other many
That's
years.
True.
tell us, so you go through residency, obviously your dad was very impacted in your life, and he was very well known in Allergan. Tell us the pathway. What made you, because up until what, I think 3 years ago you were practicing full time?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, I remember. They
close.
still miss you at the surgical center.
Thank you.
How does that work out? Like, what's the pathway look like for you?
That's a really interesting question. When I was growing up, we had a lot of eye problems in our family. My mother has retinitis pigmentosa. I was born premature, had very high myop for a long, long time. So we all got to know ophthalmologists very well all throughout my adolescence. On top of that, as you said, my father was global head of R&D at Allergan for 25 years, doing mostly ophthalmology. So between living ophthalmology growing up and talking about ophthalmology on the business side growing up, when I decided to go into medicine, it was either ophthalmology or to go to business school. Don't go into ophthalmology. Yeah. So I've always had a passion for inventing things, but I've also appreciated being even a patient to the ophthalmologist, because you can see, it really affects your quality of life pretty dramatically.
Absolutely.
So that's how things started off early on. As you know, I practiced for 18 years in the same neighborhood as you did, with the same surgery center and all that, and a lot of the same colleagues. And I did transition a couple of years ago into only running these businesses. This is my third biotech company that we've started with my father and I together.
But this is the first time you actually don't see patients anymore, right?
That's the first time I don't see any patients anymore.
Things must be going well. How did that conversation go with the wife?
It was a long conversation.
But happy wife, happy life.
Yes, in general, that's true.
Very good. So as young entrepreneurs, young MDs,
yes,
they could have a potential path into industry.
I think so. I think the only thing is the skill sets are different in medicine, and being in business or an entrepreneur, the skill sets are quite different. Yeah. In medicine, you have much more of an intimate relationship with your patient and much more of a one-on-one control of your destiny. For business, there's lots of variables, and you can only maybe control half of them on a good day.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think a lot of outcomes in medicine are pretty de-risked if you already kind of know.
Or they're on you, and if you do a good job on your surgery, or you plan ahead, or whatever it is. But in these kind of businesses, what's the business climate like? How's the FDA feeling today?
So many variables.
What is another company doing that affects your landscape for you?
So was that something? Do you think that you can learn that, or was that something you?
Yeah, no, I think you can learn that.
You can learn. Yeah. So you kind of learned that along the way, kind of let go of all the uncertainty, if you will. So you have to be comfortable.
You have to be comfortable with uncertainty and have a thick skin, and not take no for an answer.
Sounds like a typical clinic patient.
Sometimes.
Very good. Well, it's an honor seeing you every time. I feel like I talked to him for another 2 hours, but he's got to run. But I wanted to wish you congratulations.
Hey, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.